Well, it is so good to be here with you all. The Johnson family over here, we are inspired by our experience with you. We've been here a few short weeks, but your energy, the spirit, and the faith of God is alive here. And so thank you for calling us, for investing in us. And now as we begin this journey together to live out God's hope and purpose in life together. Washington has been a great greeting as well. We heard it rained here all the time. I think you're lying. We get here and it's the hottest and driest May on record. We left Minnesota. It was the snowiest April on record. I do not know what is in store for June, but we're going to keep our eyes open and pay attention. Yeah, some record's going to be set somewhere. It might just be here. But yeah. Washington is a beautiful place. We lived here once before. We do know it rains. Our first winter, it rained 46 days straight. So we know that that's coming, but we're ready for it. Well, enough about those kinds of stories. We have lots of stories that we can tell as we meet each other along the way and as we dive in different ministries together. I want to share a word from God from these texts, and you'll see it up on the screen there. I want to talk about imprisoned rhinos. Imprisoned rhinos versus the Jesus Kintsugi kind of life. And you're scratching your head saying, what in the world is this guy going to talk about? Well, as Dean was talking about, we all live as imprisoned rhinos. We have a particular way that we maybe think or that we were told that this is just the way things are, and you got to keep it that way. You got to double down on it if you have to. You have to argue, but you live within a certain framework, and you stop at some point taking in the other viewpoints. You just shut it down. You live as an imprisoned rhino. Maybe it's a way of protecting our soul or our heart or our mind, but we see that in the Gospels over and over and over again with Jesus and certainly the hard-headed disciples, but yes, the Pharisees and the Herodians, everyone around him. They live in such a way that they are missing out on the life that really is life. Here today, we hear the story that Jesus heals a man with a withered hand, and they're so down on Jesus because it's the Sabbath and he's breaking the religious law or rule that they cannot even celebrate with this human being who's been given his life back. Wow, how sad to live that way, to miss out on that kind of joy. And so I also often talk about how an imprisoned rhino is one who causes deflation. Constantly stripping away the joy or the hopefulness of things because you just can't celebrate what's going on. You're so stuck by the law or the religious rules that you've been filled up by. There's none of that in the church today, is there? The church is very open to the Jesus spirit, yeah? Maybe not so much. It's tough. It's tough because we grew up or we're told one thing, and now can Jesus expand that? Can Jesus increase our mindset or help us to think a little bit differently? Well, there's a story of an imprisoned rhino, an actual rhino, that lived its life out in a zoo. And a very popular zoo, and people would come and take their picture with the rhino, in the background, and they shared that. So millions and millions of people have seen this image of this imprisoned rhino living out at the zoo, but we don't think of them as imprisoned, do we? They're just zoo animals, right? But one day, those animals get to be retired. And the gift to this rhino was to take it back out into the African wilderness and to set it free, to really let it roam and wander the way maybe that God intended at the very beginning. And so they took it out for its retirement party, and everybody was celebrating. And of course, they tagged it so they could monitor how this rhino was doing. And they discovered a very weird thing was going on with this rhino when they went out to do a well check on it. It was only walking within the same distance that it had lived in that zoo. It kept pacing that same perimeter. It had the whole wilderness right out in front of it, but it couldn't think beyond the mental map, the trap that it had lived before. So Miles Monroe, a great Bahamian preacher, said a line in one of his great sermons. He said, "The greatest project in the universe is the reconstruction of the human mind." And I so resonate with that because, again, we live in a world, when you look out politically or religiously, we're trapped. Things could be so much better. Things could be so much more alive or made well or whole, but we are limiting what God can do. And I think God comes to us today in Jesus, shaking his head with these disciples and these Pharisees, saying, no, stop missing it. Get your head up. Look out. There's more going on than you even realize. And so when we march off to work, or our kids march off to school, or as we deal with things in our families, there's all these boxes. We separate things into this box and this box and this box. And if we can keep them in that way, we kind of feel maybe there's a sense of control. But I think Jesus comes into the world to dismantle all of those boxes, to say we don't need boxes, we don't need walls. Let's all get in there together. Let's really dig in, see where God needs to be active, see where God needs to bring about life. And let's go to work on that. And that will be the blessing that others can experience, that we need to experience. I think Jesus is always yearning for us to live the true essence of our humanity. And he's looking out there saying, we have work to do, amen? Lives need to be transformed. People need to be raised. We need to set our sights on that. This is what God is calling us to engage. The hurts and hopes of humanity. And we all got them, do we not? We all got them. And we sit back and we can take time like this as the church to come alongside one another and truly reflect. Then God sets our sights on how we can raise each other up. When we look at Jesus, Jesus comes into the world, and yes, he teaches and he heals and he feeds and he encourages. But what is it that Jesus really came into this world for? Why was he birthed? Why was he raised? Why did he live? Why did he die? And why was he raised up? There's one thing that I, as a pastor, truly believe in with all of my heart, and it's this: that Jesus' greatest desire is for humanity and for all of creation to be fully alive. Fully alive. Not 99, not 98, not 95, 100% full tilt alive. That's God's hope and dream for all people and for all of creation. And as we heard in the Corinthians text, we have this treasure in clay jars. God is the one who, through God's hands, shapes and molds and makes us into the people that God desires us to be. We're not the potter. We've often confused that and made that mistake. God is doing that. And yes, we have our chips and our cracks, and sometimes our pot is tipped over. Sometimes it sits on the deck for 2 or 3 seasons just there, but no dirt or no flowers are planted inside because life was too busy and we never got to it. The pot not being able to really fulfill its purpose, but it still has a purpose. It still has a vision for what God will want to do with it. And all of us have been uniquely and wonderfully made, all of us different, all of us where God can go to work. And so the challenge is, as that clay pot or as that vessel, is for us to live the Jesus Kintsugi life versus living as an imprisoned rhino. And what is that? Well, in Japan, there's this ancient art practice. Instead of taking a pot that's chipped or cracked and throwing it away like we would do as Americans, right? You just can't use it anymore. Just run down to Fred Meyer and get a new one. No, they want to take that and they want to melt down gold and pour it into the cracks, which actually reinforces it. It makes it stronger. It makes it more beautiful, and it restores it back to its original purpose. Beautiful images for us to consider. Well, take that image as the image of your life and how God is pouring grace and hope and joy and new life into those broken places that you experience. See, Kintsugi is more than just that gold. It's about a rebirth. It's about making beautiful yet again. It's healing, and it's not hiding the broken places, but actually accentuating them, saying through that struggle, through that loss, through that pain, through that suffering, God will do a new thing. God is still at work. So you see, church, even though we have our missing pieces and our cracks and our chips, those scars, those life experiences are beautiful, and they're meant to be shared. They're meant to be a marker along the way. that restores us back to all that God has in mind. And so as you walk out today, what is it that Jesus most desires? A new mind, a new heart, a new soul, living on purpose, being fully alive. And so my challenge for you, as you go out, I want you to find somebody this week, this month, this year, somebody who's living as that imprisoned rhino. And they cannot see another way to do something. They just got their head down and they keep bulldozing ahead to say, but what if? What if it looked like this? What if life could look like this? And nurture them along the way. And then for yourself, I want you to take some time thinking about how you are that clay vessel that God is at work in, beautifying, restoring, making whole and well, so that this world can be transformed. Because, church, we do have an option. We can go out and live as the imprisoned rhino, or we can embrace the Jesus Kintsugi life. Which one do you prefer? The Jesus Kintsugi life. Practice saying that over and over. And share that story with others and say, God is there in the midst of that brokenness. God is doing a new thing. And just watch as you do that, the life that God will bring to you, this church, and this world. It's absolutely worth it. And God's people say, Amen.
Thanks for watching. I hope this video can further the discussion of your relationship with Christ, either at home or maybe in the comments below.